everyone, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet this super easy on-the-go makeup bag. Now you can put your cosmetics in there. That works great for on-the-go, but you can also put your crochet hooks or other knitting supplies in there, crocheting supplies, whatever you need to take your crafts on the go. The other thing is this bag fits your phone perfectly. So there's lots of uses for this on-the-go cosmetic or just little bag. It measures about 5 inches by about 7 inches, so it's a great size for lots of things to take with you on the go. Now you can find this free crochet pattern on my blog, and as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To make your on-the-go makeup bag, phone bag, or crochet hook bag, you're going to need some cotton. Now I'm using Premier Home. It is 85% cotton and 15% polyester. I'm going to use this color. It's just called pastel blue for the body of my bag, and then I'm going to trim it with this yellow. The yellow is called Sunflower. You're going to need approximately 2 ounces of your main color for the body of your bag, and then about 1 ounce for the trim in another color. Although you could do it all in the same color if you want to. And remember, you can use any colors that you want. You can use variegated, striping, whatever colors that you love. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You're going to need a button that's about 1 inch wide, and this button will make a loop for so that we can close our bag. And it can be any button that you like. I like to use a plastic button when I'm going to use something that possibly could get wet because of it being a makeup bag. We might want to wash it. And even though wooden buttons are great, I love wooden buttons, I really kind of prefer a plastic one for this project. You're going to need a needle to weave in those ends, of course, but you also want to make sure that that needle can get through those holes of your button when you're sewing it on. Or you may need to use a different needle as well for that. And then, of course, you need your scissors. To begin, we're going to start with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 17 chains. We're going to begin by placing a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. We don't count the loop on our hook, so there's the first one, here's the second one. We're going to go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. And we're going to place 1 single crochet in each of those chains across. I began in the second chain from the hook and stitched 1 single crochet in each stitch across. So I have 16 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn. For row 2, we're going to place 2 single crochets in that first stitch. Our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, it's just a turning chain. Now we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each stitch across until we reach that last single crochet. And in the last single crochet, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. I stitched 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 single crochet in each stitch across until I reach this last single crochet. and I'm going to stitch 2 single crochets in this last stitch. Chain 1 and turn. And since we increased at the beginning and end of this row, we have 18 single crochets. Now for row 3, we're basically going to repeat that. We're going to stitch 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 single crochet in each stitch across. And then again, when we reach that last single crochet, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. So again, I stitched 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 single crochet in each stitch across till I reach the last stitch, and I'm stitching 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And chain 1 and turn. So we began with 16, row 2 we had 18, row 3 we have 20, because again we increased at the beginning and end of our row. And we're going to repeat this one more time. Chain 1, turn, and 2 single crochets in the first stitch. And then 1 single crochet in each stitch across. And then again, in that last stitch, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. And this is our last increase row. So again, we stitch 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 in each stitch across, and we're going to stitch 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Chain 1 and turn. Now this is going to be the edge of the flap of our bag. We're going to be stitching it long, folding it up, and that flap is going to fold forward. And that's where the increase stitches make it a little bit rounded. And it'll look a lot better once we get all the trimming on, of course. Now, for row 5, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in that first stitch and 1 single crochet in each stitch across. No more increase stitches. 1 single crochet in each stitch across. I stitched 1 single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1 and turn. And so now what you're going to do for the next 31 rows, you're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each stitch across, chain 1 and turn. So you're going to be repeating row 5 31 more times. I have repeated row 5 for 31 more rows, and that gets me up to row 36. All right, so I'm going to cut my yarn, and I'm going to bring in my trim color. If you want to keep yours the same color, you certainly can. Now we're going to turn, and we're going to put a complete trim of single crochet working all the way around our bag. So we'll start by single crocheting 1 single crochet in each of the stitches across the bottom of our work. And we'll work all the way across to this corner. I've stitched across just like we did previously, only with my trim color. I'm going to place a second single crochet in that corner, and now I'm going to evenly single crochet across. I'm going to go around the bag flap and then back down this side. And the best way to do that is to try to put 1 single crochet in the side of each row. And we want to try to go in the side of the stitch when we can. When you work evenly, when you don't have a stitch to put it in, there isn't a set amount of stitches that you're going to work in. You're just going to evenly stitch across, trying your best to get your stitches nice and even and that they aren't too puckered up and aren't too far apart. When you're working with single crochets, it makes it a little bit easier, and what I try to do is place one single crochet in the end of each of those single crochet rows. And I do try to go into stitches if I can. I've worked my way up the side, and now I'm to the rounded edge of my bag flap. And it can be a little bit challenging because you want to make sure your stitches are nice and even. We are still working evenly, placing a stitch in the end of each of our single crochet rows. And then when you get to the top here, we have those stitches that were our beginning chain stitches, and you can basically just stitch a single crochet in each of those chain stitches that we began. And that's how you get your rounded edge on your bag. And we'll stitch across in those stitches and then evenly single crochet back down this side. So we stitched across the bottom, we placed 2 single crochets in the corner, then we single crocheted evenly all the way around and joined back to our first single crochet down here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over and we're going to line up the bottom of our bag with row 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now you can see how the bag's going to work. And this is our flap. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to join. I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and join right there. And pull that loop through. Now I've got some strings there that need to be weaved in, so I'm just going to tuck those inside for now. All right, so we'll make our chain 1. We're where we need to be, and now we're going to single crochet across, going through the front loops and the back loops of both sides and stitching a single crochet. So we're stitching the front to the back. There we go. Whoops, get in there. And we want to use a single crochet because we want to make sure that our bag stays securely closed. There we go. All right, then we'll just work down the side here. Going through the front and the back and single crocheting our seam closed. All right, I'm going to put one more stitch in the end. And now we're going to cut our yarn on this side. Tie that off. I'm going to go ahead and put my hook inside, and I'm going to pull that string to the inside, and then I can weave that in later. And so now the one side is finished. Now what we're going to do is we're going to join our yarn, and we're going to go through the stitches on this side and a stitch on this side, and we're going to join our yarn right here. Now we're going to stitch back around the flap, and then we'll join here and stitch this side together so it's closed like that side. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch one single crochet in each of the stitches working around the button loop until we reach the center so we can make our button loop. All right, a few more stitches. String there. I have stitched to the center of my bag flap, and I'm going to chain 8 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to join to the top of that single crochet with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet in the next stitch, and that forms a nice tab for our button. All right, so now I'm going to continue working around the top of my bag on my bag flap until I reach around where this is, and so we can sew that or stitch that. So now I've stitched around. I have one more stitch. I'm going to make sure I'm lined up on the same row. I'm going to go in the first stitch here and the next stitch here and stitch a single crochet. But before I stitch this side together, I want to make a loop so that I can maybe put my wrist through or hook it onto a bag. And you can do this if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm going to chain 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. All right, now I'm going to join to that single crochet like we did up there on our button loop. With a slip stitch. There we go. Had that one a little snug. All right, and so now I'm just going to go in the next stitch on both sides and single crochet this last side of my bag together. I single crochet down the side, stitching the back and front together just like I did over here. And so I need to cut my yarn and tie off. Now I do have a few ends that I need to weave in. I'm going to pull this string to the inside so I can weave that in on the inside. Here is a loop so we can hook it onto our bag. Here's our button loop, so we need to sew our button on. And I have a few ends to weave in and tidy up my bag. And then I'll show you how to add that button. I have tidied up my bag, woven in all my loose ends, and now all I have left to do is add my button. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the flap and fold it down, and then we know where to line up our button in order to button our bag. All right, so I've already got some yarn threaded on my needle, and what I do is I go in and I try to go through stitches, not holes, and I make a little loop first through those stitches. All right, then I'll just pull that extra piece to the inside of the bag. We'll take our button and we'll sew it in place. Let's see that twisted. There we go. And you want to make sure that you sew this on securely, going through stitches and not holes, so that your button stays secure. And you can do that as many times as needed for your button. Alrighty. It's a tight fit, but I don't mind because I want my button to be on securely. There we go. And then on the inside here, let's see, there it is. Looks like I missed a string there. We'll cut that, and then we'll go ahead and tie the back of this on so our button stays put. There we go. All right, so there's our button flap. And now I have a fun bag that I can put my makeup in, my crochet hooks, or my phone.